From the WACH Fox studios, this is On Point on WACH Fox with Cynthia Hardy.
Good morning. Welcome to On Point on WACH Fox. It is a pleasure every week to bring you the show, and I do hope that you'll take the opportunity to tune into the radio show On Point with Cynthia Hardy, heard every Sunday evening, 6 p.m. on 101.3 The Big DM. This morning on Point on WACH, bullying. It's not just a problem in South Carolina schools, but in our communities as well. As of January 2007, South Carolina passed legislation requiring all school districts to implement a policy that prohibits bullying and intimidation. Research shows as many as 1 in 3 children are either the victim or instigator of bullying in schools. Some say that number is even higher, resulting in thousands of school absences. And bullying isn't just confined to schools. Cyberbullying is perhaps the most popular way to intimidate and threaten, mostly using Facebook, text messaging, and IM. While most of the attention with this issue centers around schools and students, new research shows it is a growing community problem, often impacting adults as well. As always, I'm seated with my favorite Fox anchor, Brian McConkey. Brian, this is an issue that's really important in our community, and I was very excited to see the attention that the newsroom has put on it with your series.
Yeah, this past week we ran a very interesting take on how to battle this, because very often you see in the school system, the bullying takes place, and what happens? The person responsible for it gets suspended, gets expelled even. And some people say, well, if it's gotten to that point, it's too late by then, because all you're doing is isolating that kid even more. So we found a man who is a school resource officer in town, but also a very accomplished martial artist. And he is using that to kind of channel these children's frustrations and show them a better way. I want to give people just a quick sampling of what we found here.
Go! Chair Atkins is learning to channel his frustrations. Recently, though, that's been a problem for the 11-year-old.
Get your frustrations out here.
He's been the target of bullies, and it's led to some fights at school.
They think just because I'm younger than them that they're bigger and better than me.
Come on, let's go.
Atkins skipped ahead a grade, and as a result, he's smaller than most of his classmates. And his mother, Sarita, says the 6th grader feels the need to prove himself. And it's caused some problems at home and even got him suspended.
He's had issues with school, disrespect of adults. Basically, he just feels as if he's grown.
Dig deep, let's go!
Atkins is one of roughly a dozen boys who have either been bullied, are bullies, or are otherwise labeled at risk. They've landed here with 4th-degree black belt Lance Adams in a program called CHANCE. It stands for Changing Habitual Actions Through Nonviolent Combat Arts Education. They're not learning to fight, rather Adams is using martial arts to teach discipline and teamwork, something that turned his life around when he was the same age.
You know, and I did have an ego, arrogance, or whatever case may be, but martial arts quickly showed me how that I wasn't as bad as I thought I was.
Wow.
That's a pretty telling comment from the man who founded that. And a lot of people said they're learning to fight there. No, they're not.
They're not?
That's the exact opposite. They're not learning to fight. He's using that physicality to break them down physically and build them back up.
Oh, that's
mentally
interesting and impressive.
Physically. And letting them know that, you know, you're not in this alone. You guys are going to work as a team. We're going to do these things together, and it lasts for 10 weeks. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website, MIdlandsConnect.com, and learn about that program, because it runs in 10-week cycles, and then new kids get involved in it.
You know, it seems really good because it helps the young people understand how to channel aggression.
Sure, and he puts all the kids in the same room. The bullies, the bullied, or just kids that may be having some behavioral issues, and they try to figure out what's going on.
Well, speaking of figuring out what's going on, that's why we asked Hannah Hopkins with the South Carolina Association of School Administrators and Dr. Patricia Moats with the OVEA's Bullying Prevention Program to join us and at the beginning of the show to kind of set it up for us. Sometimes I think that there's so many different definitions of what bullying is, and if you all would kind of lay it out there for us, because we recognize while school administrators are dealing with it, the community's dealing with it too. So give us a central definition, if you would, Dr. Moats.
I think that there are 3 basic components of the definition. One is that it is aggressive, that it's an intentional act to be harmful towards someone, that it's repetitive, or at least has the potential to be repetitive. And for me, the cornerstone of the definition is that there is an imbalance of power. and that there's either real imbalance of power or perceived on the part of the person being victimized.
You know, that's interesting, Brian, and I know that you found this as you did the story, that schools more and more are having to deal with it. I was speaking to an administrative friend of mine, and he indicated to me that in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, they air an announcement in their school to say to people, the kids, if you are being bullied, or if you know someone, or if you see it, then please inform us.
That's right, and that's part of the AVEAS bullying prevention program. One of the rules of that program is that you tell an administrator or just tell an adult if you are being bullied. So that's very important and great thing that they're doing in their school to let students know that they should feel comfortable, and they can feel comfortable going to an adult if they feel that they're being bullied or if they see someone else being bullied.
The interesting thing I found in doing this piece that about bullying was that very often that's a really hard thing to do, to get a young man or a young girl to tell someone something's going on, and they let it fester inside, and that can make them into a bully even, and just make their behavior really awful.
Well, and one of the things, though, that helps kids develop the capacity to come forth and talk about bullying is to have a full program. If you simply say, come and tell me something, that's one thing, but if you create a whole environment in the school where there's a culture that it's not tattling, we're telling, it's supporting, it's a relationship building. You have to create this environment of safety and caring. And once you create that full environment, and children and students learn that when I tell, something happens. Because again, if you simply tell and nothing happens, there really is no reason for a young person to come forth and talk about something.
Sure, because they feel there's no action being taken at all.
You've got to have more than simply tell me about it. You've got to have something programmatic in place that will do something to make me feel safer.
Are more and more people realizing that it's about creating that safe bubble, I guess you could say, where they can come and have those discussions? Because it took us a while to get to that point, didn't it?
Well, certainly now I think what we have is the evidence-based models around how do you address bullying in schools, in communities, or wherever is really about creating a climate of safety and care, not just, as you pointed out earlier, expelling the kid who's been doing the bullying, because that doesn't help that child learn skills. It simply gets rid of him for a time. And of course, as we know, that the bullying doesn't stop just because it's outside of the door of the classroom or outside it's still wherever the children are.
It's interesting because for a number of children, the research says they're either bullied or doing the bullying themselves. Do you find that children who've been bullied often become bulliers as well?
Well, I think there's some research that suggests that there are those combinations. A lot of times the kids who have it's like, for example, a kid maybe with some kind of learning disability or some kind of, maybe a kid with ADHD might find themselves, their own needs might set them up to easily be picked on, and they become the bully. And then in their efforts, in their level of social skills, in order to be able to address how to deal with it, they then might take on some of those characteristics. So there is that. Kids who are bullying, those who are being victimized, and some that are in the middle doing a little bit of both.
Ms. Hopkins, I would imagine then it's really important for school administrators to know how to deal with it immediately.
Right, that is very true. And when we were talking earlier today, we talked a little bit about the South Carolina Bullying Prevention Initiative that the Association of School Administrators along with Clemson University partnered to form. And as part of that program, in that initiative, we have selected 11 pilot schools who are implementing the AVEAS bullying prevention program. But in addition to those 11 schools, there are a total of 51 schools in the state who are implementing that comprehensive program, and most of them are in their first year of implementation, just finishing up that first year. So it'll be real interesting to see, how the results come out, and I think that they'll find some positive results, but they do have the opportunity to learn as an administrator how to handle those, and then also the teachers and all support staff in the school. They know what to do in the event that a bullying incident occurs.
We're going to go to break now and come back. You guys stick around. We come back, we're going to continue our discussion on bullying, not just a problem in our schools, but in our communities as well. And it doesn't just impact kids. Sometimes it impacts adults. Sometimes they're victims as well. We'll be right back.
You're watching On Point on WACH Fox with Cynthia Hardy on Columbia's own WACH Fox.
Welcome back to On Point on Watch Fox. Brian McConkey and I are talking about the issue of bullying today and the fact, Brian, that it's not just a problem in South Carolina schools, but in our communities as well.
It's a problem everywhere, not inside our state borders either. And if you don't address it when people are young, it of course can carry over into behavioral issues as they get older, and even make them bullies in the workplace at some point. Just because you're not 13, 14 years old anymore doesn't mean it goes away. But we had a good discussion in that first segment about why this happens. How do you address it? And one other thing is, during the break we talked about there's no typical person that's bullied. It applies to everybody, but there are some people who are targeted
Well,
for
I think
reasons.
for sure there are kids that are more likely to be bullied, and from kids who have learning disabilities, mental health disabilities, who may be gay, lesbian, bisexual, etc. So there are segments of the population that have a higher likelihood, but it also depends on the environment you're in. So if you're in a school where that 1% of the kids are black, then maybe the black kids are being bullied. So it just kind of depends on the environment you're in, and there certainly are groups that are more likely to be picked on. So is it the kids with the red hair and the big glasses? Well, maybe, but maybe not, because it depends on lots of things. Kids who are socially awkward may be more likely to be bullied.
Dr. Rose, why are we so mean to each other?
That's a good question.
Well, I don't know the answer to why we're so mean to each other, but maybe we've always been mean to each other. Maybe we've always been mean to each other, and certainly now we have a lot more ways to be mean to each other. And so maybe because of that, we're getting a lot more attention about folks who are doing lots of inappropriate things.
Because a lot of times I hear people say that something is a bullying incident, and it may be an act of aggression that may or may not be classified as bullying, I would imagine. There are things that you all say to parents and things that you all say to students about not being bystanders, feeling empowered to actually act on it. What are some of those things?
Patricia, you can probably answer that question better than I
Well,
can.
I think with the bystander, again, kind of as I said in the earlier segment, it's important to having a whole comprehensive way of looking at things. So in that manner, then children learn, for example, girls do this thing of excluding kids out of the circle. You're not my buddy, you're not my friend, you can't be in this. And a bystander can learn, I can empower that person by sitting next to her and joining in with her. So little simple things. Obviously a big thing is to come to tell an adult, but that, as Brian suggests, is sometimes a hard thing. An easier thing to do is to invite someone who's alone to come join your circle, because the isolation places you at higher risk of being bullied, obviously.
Parents feel really intimidated about dealing with this issue because it's in their child's world, not necessarily in theirs. Did you find that in your research?
Yes, and it can be troubling too for a parent that I found, especially the young man that we talked to. Very smart young man. He skipped a grade, so he's an intelligent young man. But he was starting to have some behavioral problems because he was having these issues at school, and his mother was having a great deal of difficulty with him. The things that he was becoming aggressive and acting out and not showing respect for people. So not only did she say, yes, we try to talk about things, but sometimes he just doesn't want to open up. And sometimes he's just difficult to deal with. Yeah.
Well, in the minute that we have left, why don't you guys leave our audience and Brian and I with some useful information about the issue?
Well, I think one useful tidbit is that it's not on the children to make this go away. It really is on adults. That adults have to be responsible. It's the same thing we know about being good parents. It's the same thing about how do we address bullying. We have to be involved. We have to create environments where our children want to come to us and talk about things. We need to teach empathy. We need to know that it's everybody's right to live in a caring environment.
Hannah?
Yeah, I would agree with Tricia. I mean, I think it's important for the bystanders to know that it's really important to bring those kids in and reach out to them if they see somebody who's being bullied, to either kind of help them with that by trying to include them in their circle or going and telling an adult. But it's an issue that a lot of people are facing, and we really appreciate you all getting some more information out and really raising that awareness.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patricia Moats and Hannah Hopkins with the South Carolina Association of School Administrators. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you.
Parents often need to play catch up in order to understand that bullying issue, especially cyberbullying, and what they need to do to prevent it. So we have asked Allison Bowen, who is an outstanding author and motivational speaker, to come with us, come and talk to us about it, as well as our WACH technical consultant,
Stephen Miano.
Stephen
He knows
Miano.
the cyber field very well.
We'll be right back.
You're watching On Point on WACH Fox with Cynthia Hardy on Columbia's own WACH Fox.
Welcome back to On Point on WACH Fox. Brian McConkie and I are talking about the issue of bullying, and not just a problem in South Carolina schools, but in our communities as well.
As we all know, the game has changed, so to speak. It used to be it just happened in the schoolyard and after school
But
and in
not
the hallways,
anymore.
but you know, we have everything at our fingertips. You've got your
That's right.
tablet right there.
Right
You've got
there.
a phone in your pocket,
That's
and
right.
that's being used too, and has been for quite some time now.
Allison Bowen is one of those individuals that does workshops out there in the community, and Stephen Miano actually has workshops with parents as well. So we thought it would be great to have you guys on in this segment to talk about some of the things that you've heard about the bullying issue and what parents need to know. So go for it.
Well, the one thing that I think parents need to be aware of is that the bullying today is not the bullying of the generation they grew up in. And so a lot of times parents are very quick to dismiss what their children may want to discuss with them or may want to share about how their day went. And many times a parent will say, oh, it won't matter, you know, a few days from now or even a few years from now. And what they need to learn is to really listen to what their children are saying, because bullying is much different.
Yeah, it's a big paradigm shift. I mean, the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's not true at all in today's society.
Because they do hurt.
Oh, I mean, they're causing, in some cases, people are committing suicide over the damage done online with cyberbullying. And so clearly things have changed. And as we discussed earlier, parents aren't always tuned in because there's an ignorance in a lot of cases because the technology is moving so quickly. 5 years ago, instant messaging and texting was nowhere near as pervasive as it is now. So it's giving tools, and frankly, it's empowering people to engage in bullying who may not have really had access or inclination.
Maybe because of the anonymity?
In part, yeah, that's a big part of what we see. People seem to be divorced from that empathy that we all have in everyday interactions. They say, well, you know, I'm hiding behind this screen. The person on the other end, that's just text. That's not a human being. They don't have thoughts and feelings. When in fact, I mean, they do. And often the aggressors are in turn the victims in another social exchange the next day or the next week or the next month. So it's a war of escalation.
I would imagine the same rules apply to the cyberbullying field as it does face to face. You've got to get the kids to tell mom or dad or coach or a teacher what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think parents still are behind the eight ball when it comes to really understanding technology today and the number of different ways that their children can access different sites and how other people can access their children. But it goes back to what Patricia was saying earlier, that it's that same imbalance of power that transfers from the real world to cyber world that parents need to understand. Kids are cruel, but cyberbullying is got to be defined in a way that people really understand that it's that threat or that fear that their child may feel in order to reach cyberbullying.
I'm certain that the parents don't want to restrict what their children are doing, but they want to know what they're doing. Are there controls they can put in place on Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, things like that? Or alerts that they need to be aware of?
Very frequently in instant messaging, in gaming, in social media, there are some controls that can come into play. The real challenge you run into is often the kids are showing the parents how to get to those controls.
So they just omit. Yes, the kids show the parents how to get there, and it's easy for a young person to omit important information when telling their parent.
Or a parent may not even know the right questions to be asking.
Right.
I mean, one of the side effects of bullying is the shame involved. You know, it's similar strategies that are used in blackmail and extortion and criminal activities. That's kind of sad to say. Lord of the Flies comes to mind every time I think about this. You have these social microcosms, and parents maybe don't even know what's happening. I tell parents to be involved. Don't be afraid to look over your kid's shoulder. You know, the computer doesn't need to be in the bedroom. It needs to be in the living room, in the kitchen, so that parents can be as aware as possible.
Certainly. And as an author and as a motivational speaker, someone that's out there actually talking to parents, what do you say to them?
First of all, I tell them to listen. Don't react, because sometimes your children are going to share things with you that internally are going to cause you to want to react. You can react later, but really listen to what they're saying. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we want our parents to really be in tune with, again, today, what their children are facing, not what they may have experienced when they were growing up, because sometimes there are those emotional reactions. Teach your children empathy. Be that role model, a role model of kindness, because so many times, parents think it's okay to talk about the neighbor down the street. but then you tell your kids not to talk about someone else. And so being that role model of kindness, and find mentors. I love your segment where this gentleman is becoming a mentor to these kids, because it's not abdicating parenthood, it's just saying we need other adults in our lives who really our children can respect and look up to and have the same values and morals that we do.
And Stephen, have you seen kids that have been damaged emotionally or their spirit broken because they've been...
Yes, and it kills me because we have a gaming center where I work, and constantly kids are coming in, and you can tell, a kid will come in after school, their shoulders are slumped, they're mumbling, and when normally they're very jovial and happy, and often it's because of that exchange, that interaction. The rules are changing faster than we can maybe keep up with them as the technology grows and evolves. And yeah, we see all the time kids come in who have been affected by this. But in a group environment, you can help them cope. They talked about the acceptance and the bystander effect, and I think that's of critical importance. Not only do parents, it takes a village. The parents need to get involved, peers need to get involved, and we need to help the kids realize that it may seem like the end of the world. And to them, it's the end of the world. This is the most terrible thing that could be happening to me, but this too shall pass.
And as adults, we can help get them through.
Exactly, and with help and understanding, like you said, the listen and don't react. And I'm a parent, I've dealt with it, and often I want to react when, I just need to step back, listen, and be understanding.
Thank you guys so very much. You've added so much to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Along with Hannah Hopkins and Dr. Tricia Mose. When we come back, though, we're going to switch gears to our On-Point community segment. Brian, Greater St. Luke Baptist Church is here, and they have an all-night vigil that starts Friday, next Friday, going through Saturday. So we'll be talking to them. You guys stay tuned.
You're watching On Point on WACH Fox with Cynthia Hardy on Columbia's own WACH Fox.
Welcome back to On Point on WACH Fox. Brian McConkey and I are here. We've had a wonderful discussion on bullying. We're switching gears now for our community focus segment, and we have Muffy Allison from Greater St. Luke Baptist Church along with Deacon James Dixon. And thank you so much for being here. Yeah, you guys have an all-night vigil that's coming up. Why did you feel the need to pray all night long?
Definitely. What happened was there were a few of our deacons that got together, went to the pastor, presented this idea. Crime is definitely on the rise. We're kind of in a very central location in Columbia, right there on Farrow Road.
29203.
29203. So we are definitely, we have to be vigilant about this. So Deacon Dixon is head of our ministry, Deacon's ministry at the church. So he'll tell you a little bit about the 7 C's that Pastor Baker came up with.
And it's interesting that we are sitting here talking about this because at the first of April, the mothers ministry had a workshop dealing with bullying. Okay, and all these issues that was discussed here was discussed at that particular time. And now, since that came about, we are actually sent the deacons approach the pastor on we need to pray more about what's happening in the community, and say prayer is powerful, especially when it comes from the righteous. So basically, we were talking about the 7 C's. We're talking about praying for the clergy, okay, praying for the city, praying for the country, praying for the county, okay, praying for our city council, and also our children. Okay.
Wow.
So basically, the initial issue was the children because granted, it's summertime now, okay, and the children will be out of school and everything. It's sort of like increases in the summertime. When the heat is on, everything rises. So basically, these are some things that we try to approach at that particular time, and it's a good time to have this. And the all-night prayer vigil is something that we try to address all these issues. And as it's set up, there's an hour for everything, okay? And at the final moment, the last hour, the 6 to 7 hour, we try to bring members from the community in so everyone will get together and find out this is what we need to do in the community. And as a community, if we get stronger in the community, those issues that we're having now, facing the youngsters, facing the community, facing the city, facing the country, will be resolved. And this is what we try to hit.
And it's great that we're talking about this particular subject today because it goes back to that notion we talked about for 3 segments, that it takes an entire village, it takes an entire community to solve a lot of problems, or maybe not solve them, but at least start the ball rolling. I guess it's fair to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us the date, the time, and what you want us to do as a community.
All right, and we will be there the 1st of June. We're going to start 7 p.m. and we'll be there 7 a.m. to the 2nd of June. Now, I asked the question, where are we going to sleep? She said there's absolutely no sleeping. We will be in prayer the entire time. So definitely at 5228 Fair Road, that's in Columbia, a beautiful city.
Do you want us to come as a community?
Definitely. We'd love for you to come together. And as Deacon Dixon has said, we need everyone, our city officials. We got to pray for them because they're the ones that are making the rules, hopefully to make the changes for these kids, to put forth some changes that will take place that'll definitely benefit those kids that are being bullied.
Well, thank you all so very much, Deacon Dixon, and thank you very much, Muffy Allison, and say hey to Pastor Michael Baker.
Yes, we will.
Please do that. Brian, it's been great. It's been a great show today. I always enjoy doing the show with you. Yeah, and it's really important, too, that I think that we continue to bring these kinds of issues before the community.
Let people know how they can get involved, because if you're reacting after the problem, it's far too late.
It's far too late. So this is really good. So we're glad that you guys came, and glad we had Hannah Hopkins and Dr. Tricia Modes and Stephen Miano. Did I get it right?
You did get it right.
Yeah. I got it right. And Allison Bowen. So thank you guys. That's it for this edition of On Point on Watch Fox. Please send your comments and suggestions to onpointwithcynthia.com. Go to our Facebook page. Leave your comments. We'll see you next week.